Hey guys, it's Bailey. Welcome back to the channel and thanks so much for tuning in to what's going to be a review of a new product to hit drugstore shelves. It is the Milani Luminoso Glow Shimmering Face Palette, and I saw this while I was strolling around Ulta the other day, and for me Milani is kind of a brand that I feel like I have lost touch with a little bit. I used to know their collection really well. I feel like it was a more talked about brand back in the day or even just a few years ago, and since then, you know, there's been so many new beauty launches that it's just one of those brands that's fallen by the wayside for me. So I saw this and thought, what a good way to get back in touch with their new launches. Next up for me is going to be the eyeshadows, because I've seen the palettes that are new, well, really no longer new, and it's something that I've been meaning to pick up. But back to this palette. So this is an 8-shade shimmering face palette, contains shimmery blush or colorful highlight shades depending on your skin tone and how you like to use powders like these. So right off the bat, I thought this was going to be a really versatile palette, and it has definitely proven to be just that. The other thing about it is you can use these powders both wet and dry, which is something that I don't know that I've seen Milani say explicitly on their products, because I have something I'm also going to do in this video is compare the palette to the actual Luminoso blushes, as well as these strobe light highlighters that are phenomenal from them. But both of these kind of struck me as being very similar to this palette, so I wanted to talk about their similarities. And in looking at these, I realized that I think this palette is one of the few face items anyway from Milani that says it's meant for that dual wet dry use, so lots of versatility there as well. It retails for $17.99, which I feel is high even for Milani. Milani has generally been kind of up there in terms of price for a drugstore brand, but the quality has always been so consistently good that I've definitely been willing to pay it. But this seems like a little bit much. I went to Ulta's website and searched through the highlighters, sorting specifically for those that were $20 and under to kind of see what kind of competition this was up against. And there are quite a few other highlight palettes that give you a similar kind of variety situation, like you get more colorful highlighters, more of those kind of comfort zone champagne-y light gold sort of highlighters, but they do it for less. And they do it in packaging that might be a little bit more convenient. For as glamorous as this looks, like this reminds me of a Charlotte Tilbury palette. In fact, it reminds me of one of my favorite Charlotte Tilbury palettes, what she keeps her Film Star Bronze and Glow or Bronze and Blush Glows in. Like, this is so old Hollywood glamour to me. I love it. Granted, this is like a weighted kind of plasticky or something that feels a little bit more expensive, whereas this is plastic, it doesn't have a mirror in it. There are those differences, but visually it's very gorgeous. However, it is kind of a challenge, and I think you'll see this when I show the demo and applying the shades that I'm wearing today. It's kind of a challenge to get a brush in here, especially if you're going in to use these as a blush. Certainly the brush that I like to use, ooh, about dropped it, is from Real Techniques, the blush brush. Nice, big, fluffy. I love it for really buffing, but still getting a very light and dispersed look to my blush. It's not going to cut it to get into these kind of tiny dividers. So what I ended up using today is from Smashbox, and it is the angled powder brush, which is better. It's a little bit more narrow, it has that slanted edge so that you can kind of dip various parts in here, but doesn't do quite as good a job, I don't think, as really buffing it in there. I find I like this more for a concentrated highlight at the tops of my cheekbones. But the one brush I did find that fit, at least in the broadest part of these, is from Wet n Wild. This is the P65, which again is just, I like this as a dense highlighter brush, or you could use it, you know, to set your under eye area, kind of setting small swaths of spaces across your face. So you can definitely find something that fits in there, but then you still run into the problem of having these super narrow corners that, if you are exclusively going to use this for your face, might be harder to get out with a broad brush, especially if you're trying to get at what you would use strictly as a highlighter, like these shades, but then you end up getting into these kind of blushy looking shades around the edge here. So that's kind of, although they would be good for if you're going to use these as like an inner corner highlight with a super small detail brush, you could totally use this, again, both wet and dry. If you want a super intense highlight, use it wet to really get in there. So it wouldn't be totally wasted. I wouldn't do that with some of these more pink shades, but you certainly could if you wanted. Either way, all of this is to say that while I love the look of this palette, the actual shape of the pans does make it a little bit inconvenient to really be selective about the shade that you're using and make sure that you're able to actually use up all of the product in the pan. And given the price tag, that seems like something I don't want to have to worry about. But I actually really like this palette. I feel like I kind of came out of the gate complaining here, but it's only just because one of the first things that I've talked about is the packaging, and I feel like that is really noteworthy about this. But I actually really do like the product inside. I think the powder quality here is really beautiful. You get the variety in terms of shades, a little bit of berry over here, something more pink feeling over here, and then, you know, the classic kind of champagne. This is actually more of a soft gold with a pink undertone, but a classic champagne, a bronzy highlight. Overall, a pretty good variety. Some of these shades over here look pretty similar when you apply them, so it might have been nice to see something like a little bit more purple tone, you know, just a real departure from everything else you see in here, because there are some of those subtle similarities that when you actually go to apply them, they look pretty similar. But it does mean good things when you go in with a brush like this and you happen to just get it in 2 shades. It means it's not going to do all that much in terms of making a difference in your look. But maybe we can hope for a purple or mauve tone version of this in the future. There are some texture differences, even if the shades look similar. Like over here with the berries, there's this deeper berry, but then the one just next to it is a similar deep berry, but has a chunky gold shimmer. And that is actually, I used a combination of the 2 of these as an illuminating blush today, because I really wanted you to see just how really undetectable the gold glittery shimmer in here is. It's definitely there. I can see it if I'm really looking up close in a mirror and, you know, turning my head in just the right light. But for the most part, I couldn't tell that there is any sort of glitter in here. So if you see that in the pan and it kind of gives you second thoughts, I don't really think it shows up all that much on the cheeks. In fact, I would say, if we're getting into comparisons here, I would say that the actual baked blushes, this is in the shade Berry Amore, but I think these have far more noticeable shimmery glitters in them than this palette does. I would say that the finish and consistency of these powders is a lot closer to the new highlight formula from the Strobe Light collection. They're just very smooth, very finely milled, and pretty pigmented. I mean, even if you use these dry, you can really build it up to get a gorgeous and strong glow. Also, in terms of comparison, I wanted to see if there were any similarities in the shades between the Strobe Light collection and this palette, and the only one I found that was pretty similar was the shade that I'm holding here. This is number 4, or Glowing, and it's similar to the deepest bronzy shade in this palette over here. Granted, you get a ton more product in this individual pan shade, which is about around $10, I believe, but just wanted to share in case that's one of the shades that you were just crazy about this palette for. Know that you might have something similar sitting around in your collection if you have this. Overall, I really like this palette. Even though the price is kind of up there, I feel like if you know that you're gonna get use out of all or most of these shades, then it might be worth it for you too, because I can totally see this as being a palette I travel with, given how slim and compact like the profile of this is. Super easy for travel, I think, and it serves for me as both a blush and highlight palette, and one that gives me multiple options of each at that. So that for me makes it worth it, but I did just want to point out some of those other things that I feel like if they come out with a version 2 of this, I would like to see done just a little bit differently, like the format of the pan size and shape and everything. But beyond that, it's pretty great and has really only made me want to go back and try more Milani, like I mentioned earlier, and also revisit the stuff I already have in my collection because it's reminded me of what an awesome brand it has been. So those are my thoughts. I really hope it was helpful for you guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Besides that, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye guys!